And it's your average hockey fan here. Once again, your average UFC fan tonight. And these are my top 5 fights I'd like to see in 2019 or by 2020 or mid 2020 for sure. My number one would be Brock Lesnar versus Stipe Miocic at heavyweight. Of course, they're both heavyweights. They're both bad boys. Brock Lesnar's MMA record is 5-3, which for a lot of people would be like, whoa, 5-3. But he's a former heavyweight champ. The fights he has won have been big fights. The ones in UFC for sure. He's beaten Frank Mir. He's beaten Shane Carwin, and he's beaten Heath Herring in the UFC. He's also beaten Mark Hunt, even though that was overturned. He's a former UFC heavyweight champion. He's a beast. He takes a lot of flack for being on PEDs, for being a bit over the top where he did come from WWE. But look at the guy. He's an absolute animal. People love to watch him fight, and you can just see why. And he is a really good fighter. PEDs or not, he's a NCAA champion wrestler. Most likely he's taken PEDs his whole life. Look at the guy. He's an absolute animal. I don't know if he'd even be close to the same without him, but that's a fight I'd love to see. And if I was in that fight, I would pick Miocic to win, and I'm about to tell you why. And Miocic's record is 18-3. 18-3. One of them was a controversial loss to JDS. A lot of people thought he won that fight. A lot of people thought he lost. I personally thought he lost that fight, but he did avenge that fight in his career. But Miocic has huge wins too. He's the only heavyweight champ to ever defend 3 times. And I think he would absolutely kill Brock Lesnar because he's so good at negating the wrestling. DC couldn't even use his wrestling on him, really. He'd be able to stuff those takedowns. Brock probably would have a bit of ring rust. His speed he wouldn't be able to keep up with the speed of Miocic because he is a big guy, but he's a lot lighter on the feet. Has way better hands. He'd catch Brock coming in for sure if he didn't guillotine him or something like that. But I think he'd get Brock gassed and either knock him out late in the first or early in the second. That would be my prediction on that fight. And my number 2 fight that I would really like to see, and I'd like to see it soon, to be honest, would be Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway in a rematch. Because the first fight they had, Conor McGregor absolutely dominated him, but at the same time, it wasn't the Holloway that we seen today. Holloway has made leaps and bounds since that fight. Like a lot of guys Conor has fought, like Poirier, but Holloway is a featherweight champ. He's a dominant featherweight champ. He's beaten most of the guys Conor has beaten. He's beaten the best of the best in the division. He's had great scraps with Ricardo Lames. He's had great scraps with Jose Aldo where he won that's how he won his title. He's had a recent really dominant performance over Brian Ortega where he made Brian Ortega look like Sloth from the Goonies, which I never thought was impossible because that dude's like the prettiest dude in UFC. He kind of looks like a fucking girl, to be honest, but he's a great fighter too. But as for Conor won their first fight, absolutely dominated the first fight, was injured, still managed to out-wrestle Holloway in the 3rd round, which is saying something because Conor is definitely not known for his wrestling in his top game. But in that fight, he dominated the ground game, dominated in the feet. Joe Rogan was saying the whole fight that he couldn't get Max Holloway. Max Holloway couldn't get Conor to respect him. Max Holloway was throwing everything at him, couldn't hit him, and when he did hit him, it just didn't seem to faze him. When Conor hit Holloway, it did. It really backed him up. It threw him off his game. I don't think he was expecting the power that Conor had and to be as wild as he was and unorthodox as he was. But I think if they fought a second time, it would be a lot different fight. It would be very close. I would probably pick McGregor. I would edge with McGregor because he has that power and he has the game to drag Holloway. Like, you're not going to beat him as a point fighter. You'd have to beat him as like a power wrestler, like Khabib, or a really powerful puncher, or a really good jiu-jitsu technician. As far as a striker like Holloway, a guy who can kind of use the ground game, I can't see him beating McGregor straight up like that. He would have to outpoint him and get him gassed, which he could do because he's world class. He could bob weave. He could back up, use that long reach that he has to avoid Conor striking and wear Conor out. And then by the time fourth round comes around, we know Conor's punches just ain't the same. He's not really knocking anybody out in the 4th round. I don't recall him ever knocking anybody out that late personally. And yeah, that's my number 2 fight. That's who I'd love to see at number 2. And at number 3, I would definitely have to go with Tyron Woodley versus George St. Pierre. It wouldn't be a prime George St. Pierre, but that's still no excuse. George St. Pierre looked great against Michael Bisping, even after a huge layoff. He's the best in the world. Tyron Woodley has been saying forever, even before he became champ, I'm pretty sure, and definitely since he became champ, that he's the greatest welterweight of all time. He's had some impressive performances, some really lackluster performances. The Damian Maia fight was terrible. The second Wonder Boy fight was terrible. The first Wonder Boy fight was amazing. Great fight, could have went either way, but I still think Woodley won that. He landed the bigger shots. He did way more on the ground. He won that fight in my mind. And as for George St. Pierre, like I said, he had that dominant performance against Bisping. His last fight before that in UFC was controversial against a roided up Johnny Hendricks, a fight that he still won. In my mind, he did win it. He won it on points. Don't care what anybody says. All people talk about is the damage, how bad George looked. Well, George landed way more strikes. He outpointed him in the championship rounds. He won it when you're supposed to win. In order to beat a champ, you should dominate a champ or not look to get a split decision or skate by. You got to beat the guy. That's my opinion. That's just my opinion. That's not me being biased. That's just how I see it. But that's a fight I would love to see. In that fight, I don't know. I honestly wouldn't be able to pick a winner. I'm a huge George St. Pierre fan. I would want to go with George St. Pierre. But I wouldn't be able to pick a winner in that fight. I wouldn't bet on it. I'd 50-50 totally on the fence because Tyron's in his prime. He's a beast. He got that power hand. He can deal with the wrestling. But George St. Pierre is just the all-time best wrestler in MMA, in my opinion. And he has the all-time best games. And I feel he could work that jab even if he couldn't get Tyron down and probably figure out a way to get him down and submit him or grind out a decision, which he's the king of. DC calls himself the king of the grind, but in my opinion, GSP has always been the king of the grind for sure. My number 4 pick would be Jon Jones versus DC, third fight, but not at light heavyweight, at heavyweight. I'd want to see what Jon Jones could do against DC at heavyweight. I did not think DC was going to be as impressive in the UFC as he was at heavyweight, even though he did have a few fights outside the UFC and a fight or two in the UFC where he did look pretty good. Frank Mir fight was kind of boring, but he looked good in other fights versus Barnett. He was a beast. But he knocked Miocic out in the first round. Who's seen that coming? Miocic is a beast, man. Miocic can take it all. He went the distance with JDS, took a lot of shots. And DC dropped him with like an uppercut, completely put him on his hole, knocked him out. And if he can do that at heavyweight, if he did hit Jon Jones at light heavyweight in their last fight with some pretty good shots, some similar shots, with that extra weight at heavyweight, like he says, he doesn't have to cut the weight, he's not weakened. If he could hit Jon Jones with one of those uppercuts, he may be able to knock Jones out. I'm not saying for sure he would because Jones is a big dude. He's never been a dude that's really been rocked and dropped, except for in the Gus fight. In the Gus fight, he took a couple shots. He did get dropped a bit, but he wasn't really rocked to the point where he was like hurt or there was any point where it looked like he was going to get stopped or anything like that. But he did take some big shots and he was hurt for sure, but he wasn't like wobbly legged, fucked up like he had Gus in the last rounds. And DC is an absolute beast. Besides what Jones into him, I've never really seen anybody hurt DC. Him and Gus had a good fight, but I honestly picked DC in that. And what Gus did land didn't really seem to phase DCU like what DC landed on Gus. Gus looked fucked up at the end of that fight too, and I could see why DC pulled that out for sure. When it went to decision, I would have been shocked if DC didn't win that fight, just in my opinion. Some people think Gus won it, but I don't know how they think he won it. If you go by rounds, DC definitely had at least 3 or 4 of those rounds in that fight. That's just my opinion. Amazing fighter. Both of those guys are amazing fighter. And I think Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time. I've said that in videos before. I'm not his biggest fan. Outside the octagon, he's clearly a douchebag. He's a greasy guy. He does really wrong things, hitting a pregnant chick and stuff. Like some of the things he's done, the way he's talked to other fighters and media members and stuff. He is a dick. He is a douchebag for sure. But as a fighter, you got to respect him. Best I've ever seen. No one comes close to Jones. He, in my opinion, doesn't have any losses. And by the way, Jones' record is 23-1, and DC's record is 22-1-0 is what it's listed at as UFC. But I thought it was 22-1-1 because one was a no contest or whatever, or a draw, whatever they want to call it. They want to get overturned against Jones. But we all know Jones beat him twice. We all know that. Coke, dick pills, PEDs or not, man, he beat him twice, made him cry like a bitch twice. That's why if DC did fight him, he'd have to beat him because, man, like, DC did not handle those losses good, and the memes that were on Facebook were brutal. He's going to have to live that down forever. And like Jones said, he can't call himself a double champ till he beats Jones. Like, he can't. He'd had to beat him at light heavyweight, I guess, because the one they're claiming the light heavyweight title is not legitimate because he didn't beat Jones for it, but he dominated light heavyweight while Jones was out. He was the champ at the time. But in order to truly call yourself double champ, you'd have to beat Jones. You'd have to have that for your legacy. DC would have to have that. And my last fight, this probably wouldn't be as huge as some other people, but there's been a lot of shit talk between two of these guys. Rockhole's been a complete dick about this guy. He's been totally hating on him, totally ragging on him. Hater status when it comes to this dude for sure. And I'd love to see him fuck Rockhold up. It's Anthony Smith versus Luke Rockhold. I know Anthony Smith's fighting Jon Jones. In my mind, he doesn't have a chance in that fight. No disrespect to Anthony Smith, but he has 13 losses. He's been at it too long. His wins are a bit overrated. He beat Uzmir, who's never really truly beaten anybody big. He's beat 2 former champs that a lot of people's minds are washed up. I think Shogun still has something left in the tank, but He's beat 2 former champs. Rashad's retired, sure. That's one of the guys he's beaten. And Rockhold is a beast for sure. He's beaten Bisping back in the day. He's beaten Weidman. He has some huge wins. Strikeforce, he was awesome. He got fucked up by a PED Vitor. It's one of the best highlights ever where he gets kicked in the face. But Rockhold's a douchebag. He's always been a dick. So full of himself. So arrogant. The most arrogant guy. Thinks he's like the hottest dude in UFC. But to me, he just looks like a fucking mush brain. I honestly cannot stand the guy. He looks like one of those guys that like looks all right and are just brain dead in the head when it comes to anything about intelligence or anything like that, other than fighting and talking about how good he looks in surfing. He's a fucking douchebag. I've never heard him do anything good for anybody, and he's always degrading other fighters. He always puts himself on a pedestal above other guys, even though these guys he's talking about, like John Jones and people like that, they're better than him. He put himself above Bisping and he got knocked the fuck out, and I love the way he got knocked out. I love the shit Bisping talked after it. He totally deserved it. Rockhold is like the biggest dick in MMA. I know he's buddies with DC, and some people think he's funny and he got personality and all that. Not me. I just think he's so smug, such a douchebag, rubs me such the wrong way. In real life, he could be a great guy, but from what I've seen in the media and his interviews and the way he treats people, nobody should get on like that. You shouldn't treat people like that, whether you're a fighter or not, especially not as a fighter. We already know that you're a sicko, that you got this status, that you can fuck a lot of people up. You don't have to talk down to them and treat them like they're shit, especially not other fighters. It looks super disrespectful, and it's fucking wrong, in my opinion. That's why I want to see Anthony Smith absolutely freight train Rockhold like he's done these other guys lately. Come in, back him up, get him going back, like take a couple of his kicks, say fuck your little bitch kicks, and just boom, overhand right. True 205 beast, who's also moved up from middleweight, but is bigger than Rockhold, in my opinion. I don't know, some people have said Rockhold's bigger, but Anthony Smith looks bigger to me and looks tougher to me. Doesn't have the losses, has more losses, has a worse record and stuff, but definitely has more fights and has more wins too. But yeah, I hope Anthony Smith wins that. If they did fight, Rockhold might be the favorite, especially if Anthony Smith loses to John Jones, which I'm almost positive he would. Like, there's no amount of money I wouldn't bet on John Jones winning that fight, because it's easy money. But if he did, I hope he fucking gets a fight with Rockhold, and I hope he fucks Rockhold up. And I'm definitely picking Anthony Smith in that fight. And by the way, their records are Rockhold 16-4, and like I said, Smith got 13 losses, but he also has 31 wins. Some pretty good wins outside the UFC, and some pretty decent wins inside the UFC. So that's my take on my top 5 fights I'd like to see in 2019 or 2020. Hopefully you liked the video. If you do me a favor and subscribe. I'd love to get some subscribers going. Give it a like if you can, and drop a comment so we can shoot the shit. We can talk about MMA, talk about hockey, whatever you're into. If I see the comment and I have time, I'll be sure to reply. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Mr. Average Hockey Fan once again. Go Habs, go. Go UFC.